Hello, it's Molly with Bridget's Grove, and this is a flip through video for a 30 Days of Goddess prayer book. This is the first one I ever did using one of our pre-printed prayer books, and it was a test to see if this format would work and to see if this book would work and to see if it was fat enough with the coil binding to hold a month's worth of content or not. So this is the this was my test version. And the other thing about it is this one I opted to do because I hear people say sometimes that the working on the little prayer book is almost becomes too much pressure, too much to perform. You have to make too much. They don't have an hour a day or to spend coloring and cutting things out and making elaborate pages, and they don't necessarily, or maybe they're not necessarily interested in writing something new. And a lot of people are not writers and don't need to be writers or don't want to be writers, and so they don't necessarily want to write a new poem every day, and that isn't part of their spiritual practice, but they still want to create something and still want to have this devotional, goddess-centered practice. And so my experiment with this book was to see, can I do this? Can I do a 30 days practice? Can I create something? Can I maintain something? Can I connect? Can I check in this way without actually writing anything new and without doing much drawing or coloring or elaboration, like literally kind of a cut and paste approach to a 30 days of Goddess journaling practice or 30 days prayer book devotional practice? Can it be done without fresh material in terms of writing and drawing? And so I kept this one, and I did experience that it could be done in that way. I didn't want it to become like rote, like you just cut something out and glue it in, and cut something out and glue it in, cut something out and glue it in. I wanted it to still nurture a creative seed, but perhaps without the pressure of production. And so I did all 30 days, and I occasionally wrote a very teeny something, but for the most part, it doesn't have any fresh writing. I did the moon, the mood, and the rune every day, but that was the only thing that I wrote. And the rest of the stuff was all just what I came to that day or what caught my eye or things I punched out of issues of the Phoenix Soul magazine, which is at the Phoenix Soul on Instagram. And you can get the back issues. And then I just print them out on my computer and then cut things out. And I cut some things out of magazines. I used most of these miniaturized cards are things that I've created and given away to the Creative Spirit Circle, which is our free community, or to our patrons on Patreon. But pretty much all this stuff, all the little printable pieces are all things that I've made and given away. So they're all available. These little prayers were from Danielle Laporte. She had a little series of prayer cards, and so I printed those out small and cut them up too to include. But yeah, most of this stuff is you can just get from me. That's another Phoenix Soul bit. And so then I put them together in all these different ways. That's another Phoenix Soul. I put them together in these different ways, and I found that there was a lot of nice integration between the different components, and there was still a lot of magic to be found in connecting the dots, so to speak, and figuring out, what is my devotion? Oops, that one's kind of blurred out, but this is my devotion, claim your own brave stillness, thinking about that for the day, how do I claim my own brave stillness? If word of the year, listen to your joy, so my word of the year is joy, so that's convenient for me. But even if it wasn't that, let's see, so here's a word of the year in action, reclaim wholeness. So how does that relate? How can I integrate that or build that into my word of the year? How can I live that into being in my life, in my world? And these were from a post-it note poetry thing that I saw on Instagram and printed out small to use. So it kind of involves keeping your eyes open and collecting your resources. I keep things in little envelopes. And then with this method of just the cut it out and glue it down method, this can be a 10 or 15 minute practice instead of an hour long practice. And it can be, I still found it really rewarding. I have these little affirmation cards. So instead of usually in a prayer book, I write a new affirmation. So if the word was wild, I would write something myself, like, may you listen to the wild within. But since I have this affirmation card deck already that I'd made, I looked through and got the one that says I am wild, wise, and wonderful, and stuck that in as my affirmation, and that totally works. And then one of my little cards says, let your joy be radical, wild, untamed, and free. So, haha, it's all connected. Yay. And I loved how it worked together. That's from a calendar page. This is from a magazine article. That's from one of our business cards, the back of one of our business cards. And I was also kind of concerned, like I didn't want it to get boring or to be all the same, and it isn't. It has its own ebb and flow. That was from a travel magazine. Has its own ebb and flow, another one from Danielle. It has its own little ebb and flow and its own little meaning, and I found it helpful to just have the time to reflect and think about the elements and think about which cards I wanted to include and which pieces, what affirmation felt right for the day, what prayer felt right for the day, what little quote feels right. That's still a type of checking in. That's still a connection. That's still a devotional practice to listen to what feels right versus writing something fresh. It can be what feels, true and authentic and meaningful to me right now. And often I would read aloud whatever little prayer I'd picked. I'd just read that aloud to myself as a little practice as well, or not read it aloud to the world, to the goddess, and reflect on it for a moment. And ditto with these little books. You put something in and then it gives you a little message that becomes a little part of your story. So more Post-it note poetry. I got really into making the little fold-outs. That was really fun towards the end of the month. And so the book as a whole, rather than being a fresh creation with a whole bunch of new things that you've written, becomes kind of a wisdom book compilation, a prayer book compilation of reminders and insights and nourishment from that day that you can still page back through and have that feeling of connection and nourishment. So yeah, put one hand on your heart and one on your belly and listen. And then I had my little, and I like making those little tiny extra pop-out add-ins. And these were just, prompt words that I cut apart and put in a different configuration. A little Post-it note I found on the floor. That was one of my kids. And this is kind of like a message. A little reminder, then you put, there's a feather that I found that day. And then you pull out the little note. Listen to your joy, don't forget. So the whole thing in many ways, and then it has I love you on the back for my 6-year-old. But in many ways, yeah, it becomes, I would consider it to kind of be kind of a book of nourishment, a book of reminders, a book of love, a little love song to yourself, a representation of your devotion, your connection to divinity, your goddess-centered practices, prayers, wisdom, etc. That was one of my favorite little pop-outs. Those are stencils. It's a quick way to do some drawing without drawing. Those are cut out of Wee Moon. That's punched out of one of those free greeting cards from a charity that sends them around. Another little pop-out. And I do the little rituals that are printed at the bottom as well. And just, keep your eyes open for little things that come, little quotes that come in the mail, little pieces that you find, little things that you see and print out. There's all kinds of stuff all around, like all the time. It's kind of amazing. This was a sticker that was sealing shut an envelope that came, and I peeled the sticker off kind of carefully and was able to reuse it. And that was fun. And this is my favorite part. I did a separate little video about that, but I had the little fold out that also has still another fold out inside of it. I became so delighted with my own self when I did that. And then I didn't want to leave any blank pages, so I went ahead and finished up the book. But again, without like a lot of coloring or a lot of, it was mostly gluing. And then I was thinking about the whole point of this all is that commitment, that devotion, that showing up in some way, in some means, in some form. And that's kind of the heart of it. And so the commitment and then the watching and experiencing yourself fulfill that commitment, the keeping of the promise to yourself is really powerful, as well as the little signs and synchronicities and magical moments that arise to connect and fuel and resource you. And so then there's a pocket at the back of the bookmark, and then the stencils that I use to make stencils if I want to is right there. And yeah, so it worked, and I had a lot of fun with it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being here, and thanks for showing up to commit.